excited to be here. I've been chatting with Patricia over the last few weeks about all the cool ways we use Postman at Portkey, and it's also the fact that Portkey is one of the earliest customers. So there are multiple reasons we love Postman. So it's always great to get to meet Postman's developer community. A bit about me and about Portkey. I think that can give you guys some context. Portkey started about 1.5 years ago. We are building a control panel for GenAI apps. And what we do is we help you. You put Portkey in the middle of your request. So if you're calling the OpenAI API or the Anthropic API or the Vortex API, you will put Portkey's API in the middle of your request as a middleware, and it's a 2-3 line integration. By doing that, you will make all of your requests robust, reliable, production grade, and make all of them observable. So that is the whole promise of Portkey, and the control panel is what will help you ensure that there are no downtimes that you experience with these LLM APIs. When the outputs are wrong, Portkey will help you ensure that your pipelines still keep working and that you don't see any failures on the user experience side. Uh, LLMs are also still very stochastic; they're very unpredictable. Will help you debug these things much faster. One of the core insights that we have is LLM is a new paradigm, LLM or GenAI, right? So the primitives and the tools that you'll need to actually make using these new technologies successful are still emerging. So we're taking an early bet there, and we are thinking that the kind of primitives we're building, the kind of open source tools and projects we're building are kind of the things that will help developers move the needle and actually build production ready stuff. So I think, of course, I'd love to talk a lot more about Portkey and how at Portkey we use Postman. Before that, it would also be interesting to learn from the group here, and feel free to unmute yourself or maybe just type in the chat. I'll just go through some series of questions that I think I can warm up the group. Has anybody here interacted with LLMs? So have you tried out ChatGPT? Have you tried out the Cloud app, or have you tried out something like Gemini on your phone? Maybe just type in the chat if you have, or maybe mention the name of the tool that you've used. That can give us some context. So, for example, I'll say that I've tried out both ChatGPT, I've tried out Claude, tried out Gemini. I've also tried out the Meta Assistant that's there here in India on WhatsApp. So I see Andrew has tried out ChatGPT, Rupesh has tried out Claude, Praveen has ChatGPT. Oh, Domenico, you use Microsoft Copilot. That's nice. Right, so that gives us some idea, and maybe uh, that leads me to the second question. So, of course, you interacted with these apps, but has anybody in this room here also interacted with the APIs that these platforms expose? So, have you tried out the OpenAI API to directly call the GPT-4o model, or tried out the Anthropic API to call the Claude series of models? And maybe you can also share if you built any tools on top of it. And I think that will give me enough context to understand kind of what are the things that that would be the most relevant for this group. So if you tried out these API, just type in the chat below. So I'll say I've used the OpenAI API, I've used the Anthropic API, I've also tried out AWS Bedrock, then Google Vertex. So nice. So Domenico says that he's really interested to try it out in the future. Um, Craig, Andrew, if any of you have tried out any of these APIs, just feel free to type in the chat here. Uh, cool. So Andrew has tried out OpenAI. Nice. I think where I can start with is, and that will also give I think a nice intro to the rest of the people in the room here. It has become really easy, like tremendously easy to interact with these AI systems now. So, a GPT-4o model could be what they would call technically a 250 billion parameter model. It's a model that when you type in a request in ChatGPT, when even if you just post a hello, it ends up running thousands of GPUs or hundreds of thousands of GPUs in the backend to deliver you a simple answer that replies back as hello. And while all of these complex systems are there, these companies, awesome companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google and all, they've exposed these over very simple APIs that you can directly start requesting, and then you'll get these answers back. And then the tools that you see, tools like ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, or if any of the new tools for AI sales development or AI code review or AI code Copilot, if any of these tools you've tried, even something like GitHub Copilot, uh, these tools are essentially powered by these same APIs that these providers give, right? Uh, and over the last, since ChatGPT came in, that is kind of when we are seeing that a lot of activities happening within the industry where like builders are every day shipping out new tools and new products that use these APIs in very, very interesting ways. So it started with very simple, like somebody's building an AI sales development representative. So you give it enough data and it will give you a nice email back. And maybe that tool will also be able to schedule the emails for you further. And somebody's building a content generation app, somebody's building an image generation app. So you give it a prompt or you give it your blog, you just feed it the whole content of your blog, and it will give you a very appropriate feature image that you can put on top of your blog. Of course, people are doing code reviews. So, a PR bot. So you make a PR and then an AI bot will come and review your PR, or something like Cursor that some of you might have tried. So, you start typing and then the app will suggest you what should be the next line of code that you should write, or you just tell it kind of, this is what I want. I want to build a calculator. I want to build this, or I want to consume this API. Now the tool will go through the docs of these APIs. It will understand how to wrangle with these APIs, and then the tool will give you the relevant code back. So these are the kind of tools that people have been building. People are also seeing a lot of success for a bunch of these tools. Like millions of developers are adopting Cursor. Millions of people are trying out ChatGPT to help them write code, to help them write content and all. Now, when these developers they start consuming these APIs, one of the first problems that any developer would face, and if anybody in the room has also faced this problem, please type in the comment chat box below here, and I can also take those on. These will be problems like people are now doing billions of requests using these LLM APIs every day, and still, these APIs have an uptime of something like 97%, or a real uptime of something like 96%, which would mean that, every time you make, 100 calls, four of those automatically end up failing just because LLMs are really, really hard to make work. They fail at multiple different scenarios. They fail at the inference level, so the GPUs are just not, giving the right answer, or the system is so complex that it's turning out to be wrong at somewhere in the pipeline, or because these are LLMs. You'll also face a problem like it gives an answer, it returns an API status code that is 200. So your app would think that everything's all right, but the task that you actually asked it for, it just gives a completely gibberish or completely garbage answer. And this happens much more often than anybody would like to admit. And of course, LLMs are getting better. OpenAI is releasing newer models to help tackle these things. And of course, these things over time will get better. But as you take these APIs and you take them to production often and often, you're also still going to see a bunch of these issues, like the industry experts would call them hallucination. So you ask it for something, it thinks it knows the answer, but of course it doesn't, and it gives you a wrong answer. Or it will give you a toxic answer that is not appropriate for your app's ecosystem, or it will give you a completely garbage answer. Could do any of those things, even when it does give a 200 status code. So these are some of the problems that people face with LLMs. The other problem is the you don't have a lot of observability over really how these LLM APIs are functioning. So by that, what I mean is OpenAI will not tell you exactly how much each request to OpenAI cost you. Now, when you make a Stripe API call, you know accurately how much Stripe is going to charge you per API call, or that is true for almost any API company in the world, right? You will know at a granular level how much you're being charged per API. That is unfortunately not the case with LLMs, which will mean that you're making a million requests to OpenAI every day, and at the end of the day, you have no idea how much money you ended up spending. That is a tricky place to be in. That's one observability issue. Another observability issue is these LLM APIs. So a typical API response time, and Patricia, maybe you can help me here, it would be something like 500, 600 ms. At max, it can take 1 second. Like that is the whole round trip time, right? So you send something to the API, it is guaranteed that you will get something instantaneously, you'll get something back. That is again not the case with LLMs. LLMs take the time to reason, they take the time to process your input, they take the time to figure out if the output is passing the safety guardrails, it is passing the moderation guardrails, and then it gives you the answer, which will mean that once you send a request to an LLM, it can take anywhere between 1 second to 20 seconds to give you back an answer. Now, when you take in these APIs, when you put them in production, and while you are figuring out ways to mitigate these latency issues, it can still be the case that your user just abandons the app because they're not going to wait 20 seconds to get an answer from whatever app you're building. The worst case is you don't even know what latency you're incurring at each request level. So how do you the first way the first step of solving a problem is to identifying that there is one, right? So you'd first want to know how much latency you are getting per request, and then you'll figure out ways to optimize that. You'll figure out ways to cut your prompt size, or you'll figure out ways to change the model to a faster model, to a better model, and things like those are some of the problems that over the last 1.5 years, we've seen thousands of companies that take these LLM APIs to production. We've seen them face. And we built Portkey to tackle some of these problems. And here in this call, I'm specifically going to focus on the Guardrails solution. Guardrails is when we focus on fixing the input that is sent to the LLM, and we focus on fixing the output that is sent to the LLM. But I think so, of course, there's a lot more things to show, and I would also love to show how we leverage Postman's collections to run a bunch of these APIs, to test a bunch of these APIs, and how we do a lot of these things. But I would also like to take a pause here and uh, take any questions anybody has. If this is a field that you are toying with now, that you're just trying to build apps, and if you have any questions, or if you just like to chat anything about LLMs or Gemini in general, I think we can take out 2 or 3 minutes, and then I can maybe go in a bit more technical direction. So of course, feel free to put it in the chat, and this is a small enough room, so feel free to just unmute yourself and ask.
Sorry to interrupt. Probably I missed that point when you mentioned that there is possibility to count how many symbols in the message we have sent through the ChatGPT. Can you please clarify how can we make it, how we can count that in easy way?
So,
if possible.
So George, what happens here is there are this is something called a tokenizer. So the way we understand text and characters, right? This is not the same way an LLM like GPT-4o understands text. It takes in text in terms of tokens. A token is typically two words, like one word cut into two. So if it is George, it could be one token. But if it is my name, like Prushank, which is a bit longer, now GPT-4o, it may first consume Vru, which could be phonetically separate, and then it would consume Shank. And then so in when you have a long enough sentence or a long enough paragraph, it is going to do its own chunking of the paragraph that you got, and then it's going to do going to consume that paragraph as tokens. uh, right? And then when it outputs again these uh, whatever the output that it is doing, it's again going to first process it as tokens. So it's going to think, okay, so I got these tokens from George, and he's going to the model is going to output these specific sentences, which are again tokens. What Portkey does is we put a tokenizer on both of these sides. So and we run these tokenizers async. So when GPT-4 has generated the answer, Portkey's tokenizer will run on that output, and then we'll say that this exact paragraph that was generated, this specific paragraph contained 200 tokens. And then what OpenAI has is OpenAI's pricing is based on these tokens. So OpenAI will say that, if my model gives you 1 million tokens then I'm going to charge you $5 for those million tokens. Things like those.
Even sorry, probably missed. Even output tokens are into account. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So
Okay,
both the things.
thank you.
So if your input is long, you are going to incur costs on that front. And if your output is long, you're also going to incur costs on that front.
Thank you.
Happy to take any more questions.
Demo time?
Well, that's okay. I think we can go on. I just realized there's a cool lights are passing behind me, right? That's just the road.
Ah,
All right. Okay. But I think it would help because before I get into guardrails, I if anybody has any more questions, I think it's better that we make this a more interactive conversation, because I can go deeper into guardrails, but I would suspect that having more context about how anybody in the room is tackling LLMs or generative AI, it will help me contextualize it. Otherwise, I'd be able to give a demo, but I'm not sure how effective it would be to the kind of problems that people have in this room. So if anybody has any question, I would say it can be as simplistic as possible. It can be as complex as possible. I wouldn't know how to answer most of the complex questions, but I can take a stab at them. But it could be anything, right? It could be something simple like how do you really use the OpenAI API, or really how do you take the OpenAI API to production? What are the kind of tools people are building? What are the kind of things people are doing? I think anything is game. Just feel free to ask over chat or unmute yourself and ask.
there is one question. Presently, my friend working on the project. The project is that the bot parsing through their Telegram channels. Do you know this social media Telegram? It's like WhatsApp,
Yes,
but
yes.
Russian. Their bot parsing through their Telegram channels and downloading all the messages posted in the channel. And then all those messages are going to the ChatGPT, analyzing the information received on the basis of keywords. Like they also supply in the first message, they supply to ChatGPT the keywords like, for example, Apple, and that Apple should appear in certain messages. ChatGPT count that and give a result. The thing is it possible to set up the Postman in such a way that it will trigger kind of script, or the Postman will be automated on the basis when the new message in the Telegram channel appears? Because every time our project works, the bot scanning the whole chat for all messages. Is it possible on a side of Postman somehow to make it that only one message appeared and Postman repeat the same, but only taking only one message? Do they have some kind of triggering functionality? Can Postman stay in live waiting for the new message or something like that?
Would the Postman team want to answer?
Sorry.
I'm saying, would the
Yeah,
Postman team?
sorry about that. That's a good one, George. Do you know who the SA is that you're working with?
Sorry, SA?
Yeah, the solution architect from Postman that you're working with. Is it Jonathan Cardona?
To tell the truth, just a second, I will check. Recently we just had a lecture for Postman.
Yeah.
And sorry, George, I didn't capture the question, but I am happy to help have it answered after the session if we can't answer it while we're here.
Yeah, sure. It's just homework. I can say it's not a big thing. The idea is only has the Postman any kind of functionality which can stay online on the certain application waiting for the update, and when update comes, the Postman will trigger the sending message or receiving message, something like that.
Yeah, like we'll get back to you, but it's I don't think so. I'm trying to think through. We have a lot of long running processes, but nothing that's necessarily triggered off
Mhm.
of like a webhook or something like that. So we'll get back to you though.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I will find the name of our lecturer. I will send to
I
you.
can look it up, George. We got you. We'll follow
Okay.
up after this, okay?
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
All right, I think we can move on. Thank you, Josh.
Yep.
So I think let's move on to how we're using Postman to build these Portkey APIs and how we actually use Postman collections to show it to all of our users. So one of the cool things that we're able to accomplish with Postman collections is Portkey we now have over, I think, 40 different endpoints that are exposed to our API. And then what we've done is we've built a single Postman collection. And I think everybody can see my screen now. And we try to do it in a meticulous way. And we're very excited, also very excited with the GenAI features that Postman has, like Postbot, which would help us uh, document the API directly, or which would help us do testing of the API directly. And so it looks like this. So what we have is if we got a bunch of our APIs for virtual keys is a function within Portkey. We basically just have everything here in Postman. And whenever we end up updating, or whenever user asks, really, how do you use the virtual keys API? We typically just send them the same collection. We show them, hey, you just come here, you add your API key, and everything will keep working. So we'll show them, here you type the export key API key header. Here is where you'll pass the API key value, and that's about it. And then everything kind of keeps working. So this is kind of how the payload looks when like we add these APIs to Postman. In Portkey's case, we use this very profusely, because within the LLM world, the uh, a bunch of the prompts that you're going to write are going to be very dynamic. So we you will end up changing the API's behavior completely by changing the message body here that you'll pass in the body. So we've also, I'm not sure if I'm able to highlight those, but we've also got a bunch of different collections on Postman directly, where we would have a specific prompt that does a specific thing. And then, okay, so here's how you can do content generation, here's how you can do email generation, here's how you can do content review, and a bunch of these things. So that's how we use this. And if you see, we've got the virtual keys, we've got the logs API here as well. So logs is where Portkeys, all the observability data that you're feeding to Portkey, you can also export it for your own use case, or for when you want to see exactly all the data in one place on your own local system. You can export the logs, and then again, all of this will automatically be available. You just send a request, you have everything in your test environment. Uh, this is just a glimpse of it. But then, of course, the other thing we do is all of the different providers that Portkey supports. So Portkey supports currently over 30 plus different LLM providers. So this is everything from known names like OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini, but also a bunch of different companies like Together AI, Fireworks AI, EI21, Worker, Cloudflare Workers, and a bunch of others. And a cool thing that we ended up doing at Portkey just within the last month is we also made collections for each of these APIs. So now when a customer asks us, hey, can you show me an example of how to use Workers AI with Portkey? This is just the collection. Like, we'll send them that you'll find the example here. This is how these are the kind of headers you send. This is kind of what is in the body, and you just make this request, and you'll see the result here directly. Of course, the API key is incorrect, but this is one of the ways we use Postman at Portkey, and we end up sharing this with our own enterprise customers to help them deeply understand the value of how Portkey can be, and Portkey APIs can be useful. Any questions, or anybody wants to go deeper into these APIs? All right. I think, yeah, correct.
Yeah, I like the layout of the APIs there. One thing that I found helpful with some of my customers is that you also put examples so you can see the example responses coming back as well. So that helps just intuitively understand the API a little bit better when you see both what's requested as well as the response, a sample, good response or a bad response coming back from it.
Oh, actually, we have that as well. So we also use the documentation feature here. So
Mhm.
all of the different APIs, like this is the body, and of course a bunch of this is a work in progress because we're just updating the collection now. But our idea would be that we're able to capture a bunch of these response body structures, request body structures here on the documentation itself. So this one collection link becomes the go-to for everything about how you can consume Portkey APIs.
Yeah,
That's
very
a
good.
nice suggestion.
Didn't see that before. Yeah, good.
All right, I think I can move on to show the other Portkey feature, which is uh, okay, maybe I can share my screen, complete screen. That would be better. All right, so I'll give a very quick demo of how Portkey APIs work and what are the kind of things you can achieve with it. So this is a very simple code snippet where we are instantiating the Portkey client with something called a virtual key. Virtual key is where you'll come and add your OpenAI API keys to Portkey's dashboard, and Portkey will in turn give you a disposable virtual key that you can use anywhere within the Portkey ecosystem. I'm also tracing the request, so I'm saying that this is a request that should be tagged Postman Portkey, and I'm just making a chat completions call. This code is in Python. What I'm doing is I'm sending a very simple message, say this is a test, and let me change it to say, tell me something about the API platform. So this is a message I'm sending, and let's see when I send this to the LLM, what it gives us back. Okay. As I said, of course, these LLMs typically can take a lot of time to give you the answer. Awesome. Okay, so we got quite a nice chunk of text. It does API design and development, it does testing and automation, collaboration, API monitoring, integrations, bunch of these things. And maybe I just need to reshare my screen. Perfect. All right. So, but then of course the benefit that you get with Portkey is you come to Portkey logs and you'll end up seeing everything that the LLM sent back on the Portkey logs dashboard. So you can see that this was the request that I sent. This request, as George was asking, it had 16 tokens. The response from the LLM, it had 665 tokens. And the whole response that the LLM gave back, I can see it all here on the Portkey dashboard. Portkey will also tell how much time it took. It turns out this request took 8 seconds, quite a lot. And it cost also a significant amount of money, like 1 cent. So kind of this is the kind of bare minimum stuff that Portkey can help you do. But of course, Portkey also takes it a notch further. So what you can now do is you're asking the question to OpenAI, but you could just change it to Anthropic, and you could ask the same question to Anthropic's models. Let me see if I can make this work. So I'll say I'm changing my virtual key to Anthropic, and I'm going to change the model to Anthropic's latest model, which is Claude 3.5 Sonnet. And here I'll pass another parameter, which is, let's say, max tokens. And let's see what happens when I run this request. Now, the cool thing about Portkey and what like we're able to do at Portkey, which is this is all completely open source, the interoperability feature. And what we're able to do is the Anthropic API that we are actually calling here using this virtual key. The Anthropic API works very differently than the OpenAI API. But over on our open source GitHub project, what we've done is we've made the Anthropic API work with the OpenAI API. At least follow the OpenAI API schema. And what just that means that your exact bot message body remains the same. You don't need to do any changes, and you just change the provider, everything keeps functioning. At the gateway level, at the Portkey gateway level, we take care of request source transformations. So when we get this request and it's supposed to go to Anthropic, we'll transform the request to be Anthropic's API compliant. When we get the response back from Anthropic, we'll again transform it in the OpenAI format. So absolutely nothing on your app breaks and everything keeps functioning. So this is a nice cool feature that we're able to do with Portkey. And also maybe now I'll show the guardrail feature. So guardrails are basically, as I said, right, these LLMs, they are unpredictable, they are stochastic, which means that often they can give a wrong answer or they can say something which they are not supposed to say. For example, for the kind of app I'm building, it is imperative that my customer doesn't mention a specific keyword in their request, which means that I want to block every single request which has any mention of this specific keyword. Let's say that keyword is I don't know, mono repo, something like this. And I say, anytime I get this specific word in my input from my user, what I want to do is I want to deny this request. So I'll say, this is my Postman input guardrail. What I'll do is I'll take this guardrail that I've created. I'll just activate it by putting it in front of my request. I'll say, when before I run a request, I want to pass this guardrail. I'll again say this is my Postman input config. It's basically as simple as that. Now what I can do is I can take this config ID, I'll put it in my code here, and somewhere in my request, I'll end up mentioning mono repo. Now let's see what happens when I run this request. This will be a comma, and let's run it again. Yeah, so it says, this is coming from Portkey. It says, before request verdict was false, the guardrail check defined in the config failed. Essentially, what Portkey is doing here is when you send this request and it contains the specific keyword that you want to block, Portkey first will run its own guardrails, and if only the guardrails succeed, then the request will be passed on to Anthropic in this case. And if that is not the case, we'll throw an error. The good thing is all of this also gets observed and logged. So if you come back to the Portkey dashboard, you'll again see exactly what was happening. So yeah, this was a question that I asked that had this keyword and it failed on the specific guardrail, which is Postman input guardrail. These are the kind of things that you can do with the Portkey guardrails framework. But I think I can again take a quick pause here, see if this is interesting to the people.
It's interesting to me.
We're very excited about this. We're also excited because this is open source. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Patricia. Feel free to check out our GitHub project. I'll maybe drop in the link here. We're about to cross 6,000 stars on GitHub, and we're very happy that we're building all of this open source, powered by Postman, who helps us do all of this API testing locally as well as for every single API that we spit out. One of the design choices that we made early on was we decided that this guardrails on the gateway should be a standalone service, which will mean that it should work as a server and it should be completely separate from the whole business logic of the app. Uh, this is qualitatively different from how a bunch of the players in our domain are thinking about guardrails or thinking about interoperability, where everything is a big chunky library that is neatly and like deeply intertwined with your app's logic. And with Portkey Gateway, with the open source version, the bet we are taking is like smart developers will probably want to keep all of these features like guardrails, interoperability, including caching and all, as a separate service that interacts with your app, but that is not a core part of your app. So the business logic remains separate, and the actual gateway service remains separate, all of which are directly exposed as part of APIs that your app can consume. Yeah, I think that finishes my demo and also kind of the things that we are excited about at Portkey. I think, Patricia, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. That was really interesting and cool. And I guess at this point, I just, ask if there's any more questions. And George, I would say your CSM is actually in the room. So welcome to Elizabeth Pickle, giving her a big shout out. And actually, Domenico, she's your CSM too. Everyone's CSM, no. But yeah,
Hey,
so
Nice to
thanks
meet
for
you.
coming. We are so blessed with your attendance and everybody else's attendance too. So thank you.
Thank
well,
you
I
for
don't know
coming.
if you can answer this question. I mean, do you want to give it a shot? Asking your question, George?
Yeah, but it's just I saw that it's a silence and it's my time, but it's not very important. The question is that is it possible to force Postman to stand by waiting for messages in the channels or chats of any kind of application? It doesn't matter like which one, just to stand by to see updates and get that update into the message
Pat,
output.
is Ray? So I think you were at our on-site recently, right? Virtually, George.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I thought I recognized your little profile picture. It's great. So when you're talking about receiving updates, I need to get with Ray because in V11 we just released something called the Workspace Updates feed, where if you follow that feed on the workspace, you can accurately keep up with all the changes that are made if your admin's putting them there. So is she a part of your team? Are you on Ray's team at Epic or are you on it?
I'm so we have a work group automation team. It's a kind of homework team at Epic. We just collaborate there. It's not official task team or something. So we keep in touch with Ray there, and she mentoring me at some point. And my question is non-related to any kind of Epic business or works or tasks. It was just a knowledge development question. So
Yeah,
I don't think
I think I can Slack you directly in our shared Slack
sure.
channel. Let
No
me
problem.
send over. Our team just released something called the Postman Drop, and there are certain workflows in that I think might answer your question, but I'm one of those people where I'll spend a lot of time getting clarification, and I know I just jumped in. So let me Slack that right now. I might have already put it in your channel. I don't know if you've seen it, but I don't want to take up anybody else's time today. So let me see if you're in that channel where I sent that the other day.
And I'll also drop the community link. If you're not already using the community, it's a great place to ask questions for the community too.
Thank you.
And yeah, I would say, and thank you so much, Elizabeth. And see, George, I told you it's like now you're like trying to hide backward Simpson. That's what I call it, backward Homer Simpson. Like,
George, can you put your email? Sorry, Patricia, I'm so sorry. Before I forget, can you put your email in the chat because you're not in Epic's shared Slack channel? Oh, that's very alliterative. And I'll email you directly those resources, and we can speak through that. And if we need to get time with your essay, we will. So, can you drop your email for me? Sorry.
Yeah, I will write it in the Slack. Is it fine?
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for doing that. And I would just say, thank you to everyone's time. Drew, thanks for your time. Really interesting stuff. And love the discussion between everyone. Dominic, thanks for finding time to show up today. And you too, Andrew, so much. And Praveen, it was great to meet you. We're excited to support you getting going over there at Phillips. So please be sure to utilize us to support you on that. Roop, do good in your studies. Yeah, okay, cool. Nice to have you here. And Ronnie, yes, the recording will be sent within the next week to everyone who is registered. So with that, I would say, thanks so much. And I don't know if Rue is on Twitter, but Portkey is on Twitter. And of course, Postman's on Twitter. And that's it from my side. And just a huge thanks, gratitude.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Patricia, for doing this. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Next month, everyone. Okay. Ciao.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.